Welcome to the 17th episode of my Yakuza retrospective. Nah, I'm just messing with you. Welcome to my review of the newly released Like a Dragon Gaiden, the game meant to bridge the gap between Yakuza 7 and 8, explaining the how and why Kiryu is a main character in that game, an apology for people who got filtered by the end of Yakuza 6 and did not realize how amazing it was, and also justifying the criticism for Yakuza 7 of why is Kiryu walking around in broad daylight after the end of Yakuza 6? Is he stupid? Wrapped into a nice and neat 20-ish hour slog of busy work and some of the worst writing in the series, taking the title of Thing That Did Not Need to Be Shown or Seen away from the cold dead hands of the Majima saga in Kiwami 2. If it wasn't already obvious enough, I did not like this game. This is probably now my least favorite game in the series. It feels weird to say this because even holding that opinion, Like a Dragon Gaiden is still a better game than a lot of the garbage out there, and is more competent in certain aspects than the other games in the series. But it's also filled to the brim with content padding busy work, a leveling system rivaling how bad the colored orbs of 6 and Kiwami 2 are, mostly terrible and forgettable sub-stories, combat issues that felt rectified in the last game Lost Judgment, some of the dumbest character writing that had me wondering why everyone in this game is so fucking stupid, and a narrative to further de-elevate the ending of Yakuza 6, which I actually liked. But it's not all bad. The final chapter, barring some issues I have with the construction site scene, which we'll get into later, is great. The few good sub-stories in this game are a real highlight. There are a handful of amazing moments and writing, even if they are followed up by 10 to 20 stupid ones. Certain aspects of the combat is really good and picks up from where Lost Judgment left off in fixing the Dragon Engine's combat. It's hard to say for sure without seeing the story of Yakuza or Like a Dragon 8, which isn't out yet, but it really feels like this is a game that did not need to happen. So much was shown and told that just makes everyone involved look stupid and was perfectly fine left unsaid. The good parts of this game felt like they could have been a DLC for 7 or somehow reincorporated into 8. Months ago, I referred to this game on Twitter as the ground zeros to Infinite Wealth's Phantom Pain, but Gaiden really went out of its way in order to feel like it was worth the price tag, and honestly, it ended up making me feel like I was ripped off more than if these elements were not there. If the content padding wasn't here and they just charged $20 to $30 instead of the $50 it is right now, then it would still host some of the worst writing in the series, but at least it would not be wasting my time. It is a little hard for me to figure out how to approach talking about what I dislike so much about this game because a lot of it is interconnected issues that all inform each other. So let's start with the time-wasting crap and work our way from there. For Like a Dragon Gaiden, they decided to take the part-time hero system from 7 and let it infect every aspect of this game. The florist has been replaced with a Kame, who functions as the same character and plot device to get you all the information and spell out the plot and let the story move forward, but on a far smaller scale because the florist was so ridiculously overpowered that during my playthrough, me and my friend Pat, who is editing this video, discussed, yeah, they just kinda had to write around him every single game and come up with some reason why he can't magically snap his fingers and instantly have all the information for you, because then there would be no mystery. It's comical at times when you stop and think, how the hell is there a camera even there? What camera are they hacking into? Like in Yakuza 2 where they find out where Daigo is being kept hostage. What CCTV camera is being kept at bed height that is this clear in an abandoned building that just happens to work that allows them to see that Daigo is being tied up on a bed? RGG just really needs to abandon and stop writing this character archetype because they constantly have to make excuses and write around them. Like even in games where the florist isn't around, the Gomi Jewel have to be burnt down so the entirety of the back half of the game can happen in Yakuza 7. So with Akame, it thus introduces the Akame network, which has you helping fuckos around town.
Hey fucko! Hey fucko! Hey fucko! Yo fucko!
In order to gain the lucrative fucko points, which are one of two currencies used to upgrade Kiryu and the larger game-wide modifiers. The fucko missions appear as little exclamation points on your map, and these are all MMO tier busy work crap. I am so thankful that my friend told me as soon as the world opens up to you in chapter 2 to make sure to go to all of the stores and buy a little of every single item in the game. Doing this cut down so much time because otherwise I would go up to one of the fuckos and they would ask me for some bullshit, and if I didn't have it, that meant I would have to run to the other side of town, buy it from the vendor, then run back and give it to them. The other 4 type of fucko missions are going to a specific spot in Sotenbori, take a picture, then go back to the requestee with said picture, use your grappling hook to grab something out of somebody's reach that is right in front of them, do a battle with some thugs harassing random NPCs in town, which has been a thing since I believe Yakuza Ishin, but now it has some extra level of monetary incentive so you don't just ignore them because you are sick of constant fighting, which is already something that this game struggles with, as you can't walk 2 feet without getting into another fucking battle. Which my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory is that people complained enough about this that the Twitter account had to mention, hey guys, did you know that you can run away from battles using your jet boots? And the last being dressing up Kiryu in some cosplay and walking up to the mission giver in this specific attire that they were asking for. Which means the game wants you to spend your already spread thin money you should be focusing on these 7 trillion combat upgrades, on costumes for fucko missions so you can make more money. You are trapped in a feedback loop of needing money, so you do fucko missions only to spend more money to complete said fucko missions. And unlike all the shit you have to buy at the stores, which is already bad enough, the costume related purchases are super expensive. None of these are cheap. Now some of you may be thinking, just ignore them if you don't like it, but you really can't, because they decided for Gaiden that it was going to have every iteration of the leveling systems from the entire series wrapped into one. It has the star points from Judgment with the Akame network points, it has the money requirements from Zero, it has the iterative segmentation of the same upgrade multiple times, and the menial stat increases like 6 in Kiwami 2. The only thing they managed to leave out was the job orbs from Ishin. This means you could have enough of one of the upgrade currencies but not enough of the other, and just be stuck unable to upgrade Kiryu. This would constantly happen to me as I would not have enough Akame points to get anything, feeling impossible to even get all the upgrades because those points can also buy you items from the shop Akame offers to you, buys you game modifiers like the life skills tab from Yakuza 6 and Kiwami 2, which increases the amount of money that enemies drop from you and stuff of that ilk. And worst of all, the asking prices for both Akame points and money are ridiculously high and have too many upgrades. There is simply no way to get enough points for everything without grinding. Near the end of the game, I got around to finishing the second tier of attack damage stat boosts and thought I would finally be finished and that the thing below it would be a cool new move or something, only for it to reveal that it was another 15 damage increase upgrades with the starting price of $3 million. This completely soured me more than I already was with the system. That's not even mentioning the fact that the Akame network itself has levels that also increase by doing the fucko missions and getting enough Akame network points to unlock the next tier. There is no escaping this shit. You have to do it, unless there is some sort of Akame point exploit that I'm not aware of, and if your solution to my complaining about the grind is telling me to use a duplication glitch or completely ignoring this system even after everything I just told you, then you have a shit system. I cannot think of something that piecemeals upgrades and does not respect your time as much as this besides Yakuza 6 and Kiwami 2. The other way to gain Akame points is by doing the few sub-stories in this game. RGG really needs to find a better way to onboard the player for sub-stories because it's somehow even more tedious to accept them than they were in the Judgment series. You go to Akame, go into the network menu, accept one of the sub-stories, then you have a 30-second to a minute-long explanation of the request, then you go on your merry way, or you repeat this process 5 more times to get all the new sub-stories that I've unlocked because you made enough progress in the network levels or the main story. Most of the sub-stories are just elongated versions of the Friend Maker sub-stories from 2 because you need to recruit these guys for the arena. You go to talk to someone, they give you a short explanation of their character gimmick and possibly allude to another person who is taking advantage of them. If that is the case, then you confront that person and eventually get into a fight or two, ending off with recruiting the arena fighter. I want to say there's about 5 or 6 sub-stories that are what you would expect from the series up until this point. A mix of goofy, serious, and supernatural ones. There is the mandatory ghost-related sub-story featuring Jake Paul and his murder house. They once again brought back the annoying old lady from Yakuza 0 because she was so funny the first time, and even funnier when they brought her back the last time. I sure love how this character has become a mainstay for the series for some reason. I don't know why. I wish they would stop. Kaito shows up in another one, which was something I was sadly spoiled on before playing this game because Yakuza fans have no self-control and just raw post spoilers everywhere even before the game has officially come out, but they somehow have access to it early. It's great to see Kaito again and fun to have him and Kiryu interact, but they did my boy so dirty in this sub-story. He is completely incompetent, needlessly aggressive, comes off unnecessarily hostile, and is just a dick. He constantly fucks up and is made to look weaker, dumber, and less capable than Kiryu after just having the Kaito files showing that Kaito isn't just the meathead strong guy of the duo. This is Kiwami levels of out-of-character writing to make the extended cast look bad. That's not Kaito, that's Kawaito. This is anime
anime crossover special level shit writing. This should have me freaking out and going, holy shit, it's my two favorite characters. They get to finally interact on screen at the same time. Instead, I'm wondering when Toriko is gonna walk on screen because that's the level of quality we're working with here. It seriously feels like one of those movies where the actors have a contract dispute so they can't be shown being beaten up enough or shown losing, like with The Rock and Jason Statham in the Fast movies. Well, of course we can't have Kaito actually do anything because Kiryu has to save the day and get things done. He's the main character of this game and the one the player has control of. We can't possibly let anyone else have a functioning brain when it's not needed to move the plot forward to get Kiryu from point A to point B. That's preposterous.
Then there is the Ryuji Goda substory where gangs are using his name and likeness to intimidate people and eventually revive the Go Ryu clan. This one is pretty enjoyable. All of the stuff surrounding Ryuji Goda in this game is some of the best writing featured here. All of these guys have no idea who and what Ryuji was like. Only Kiryu does, a man who did not even spend that much time with him yet shared a very similar life and upbringing too, that their brief time created a deep connection, mutual understanding, and respect. My favorite substory in this game was the handyman one with the orphanage. Like how Yakuza 2 used Ryuji and Kiryu's similar upbringings to show how different Kiryu could have been without being set down a better path by looking up to the ideals of honor put forward by Kazama, this substory shows an alternate future of Kiryu where being raised by Kazama fills him with resentment after discovering the truth about his parents and being unable to forgive him. Matsumura's grief and inability to accept that he was raised by Kazama, who killed his parents, makes him see Kazama as nothing but a monster. He isn't technically wrong. Kazama was not a good person. He was still the head of an organized crime family and orphaned enough kids to warrant opening an orphanage, but he still does try to do the right thing when he can, which makes him a much more interesting, complex, and great character in spite of his short screen time within the series. These two substories are some of the few examples within this game that builds on the idea of misunderstanding or misinterpretation, similar to No More Heroes 2 and Travis Strikes Again, where Travis is seen in this legendary light by everyone else, and all he can think about is that this isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Kiryu shows serious regret for the actions and events that have led him to this point of isolation and imprisonment. Everyone talks up the legend of the Dragon of Dojima, that it blinds them to the reality of what it means to be that legend. The weight that comes with being at the top, always having a target on your back, being the center of countless people's lives because they are all depending on you and your strength. People have projected their own ideas of what he and his actions are like to the point it doesn't reflect reality. Enough time has passed that the legends of this series beyond Kiryu have become lost in translation to those alive now. Their legacies and character have been lost in the process of propping up their likenesses for the gain of assholes. This is probably the most interesting thing that this game puts forward and makes you think about. If this was a better game with a better story, maybe it would have gone in much more interesting places exploring this topic, instead of something left for you to think about because the game would rather throw Yakuza 0 callbacks and stupid conspiracies in your face because it's so creatively bankrupt. Hopefully this is a narrative focal point in 8, using Kiryu's past experiences to impart wisdom and life lessons to Ichiban, who is the new star of the show, and has a lot to learn after losing so many years of his life to prison. If any of this sounds at all interesting to you, I highly recommend playing Travis Strikes Again, well, after playing the first two No More Heroes games. It is one of my favorite games, at least from a story perspective. That game plays pretty ass, as this game explores what it means to have a legacy, both from the viewpoint of Travis within the series and what it means for Suda51 as a creator of art that is consumed by people, fans, and critics alike. For the combat, it really feels like one step forward, two steps backwards. People cry Blockuza 3, but I'm seeing this shit heralded as the best game in the series, and honestly, I feel like I had a completely different experience from everyone else. Enemies often have MMO tier hit feedback. They completely no-sell any hits they take. They constantly block or break out of your combos, which then makes it so your hits bounce off them like it's Kiwami 2, which seemed to have been mostly gone from Lost Judgment. This happens with both basic enemies and bosses. The worst part about it is the fact that it's inconsistent, and I don't know why it happens in one fight and then not in another. The word inconsistent can summarize the combat of this game as a whole. Half the shit that does and doesn't work in this game is completely indiscernible why that is the case. Then the other half, Gaiden decides to function like it thinks it's a real video game that is good. The balance is terrible. What I said in my Yakuza 2 retrospective has only become more poignant, that the series has continued to push the player away from heat actions, making extreme heat the thing you always want to be doing. Combat encounters are on average much larger than in the previous games, I assume so they can show off the new style and give players ample targets to use it on. Kiryu's base move list also lacks good crowd controlling swing
wings for these larger on average encounters. Only the Spider-Man cum laser exists to CC enemies without requiring an elaborate setup like the cigarette bombs, and even the lasso has its own wealth of issues we'll get into. This makes Extreme Heat the best option because you turn it on while in Secret Agent Cody Banks' stance, and the gameplay switches to Batman Arkham combat, having Kiryu fly through the air like a ballerina, killing most enemies in one hit with screen-wide tatsus. Extreme Heat basically plays the game for you as it snaps you around like I just mentioned, which makes performing actual cool-looking combos almost completely undoable in a way I find satisfying. It also somehow manages to feel incredibly unwieldy with its target selection and responsiveness to your inputs. The damage from Extreme Heat is so ridiculously high, while a lot of the other moves have been nerfed, that it's really hard not to just use this every chance you get unless you want to be stuck in long, unresponsive battles. Dominant strategies can be ignored if the overall combat of a game, or at least a part of it, has a satisfying feedback loop, but I find the encounters in this game to be some of the worst in the series, with the vast majority feeling like a slog or a chore to do. Gaiden decided to ask the brave and thought-provoking question of, what if the entirety of combat encounters in this game were modeled after the Tanimura final boss fight of 4? It looks like I'm in New Game Plus speedrunning through tutorial bosses when activating it because a single rush combo evaporates 3 health bars instantly no matter the boss. The only time it doesn't do that is when it fails to snap to one of the enemies and has you punching at the air right next to them, like it's Yakuza 1 in 2005. Why the hell would you ever do a heat move consuming all of your heat gauge to maybe do 1 health bar of damage to a boss on a good day? Not to mention that you have to waste all of your resources to buy most of the good ones when you can just use Extreme Heat after the tutorial that introduces it. I miss when heat moves were cool and good. They never should have moved away from heat moves not consuming heat if you finish a battle with them. That was honestly the best. Since enemies also break out of combos a lot, completely shattering the rhythm that combat can have, Extreme Heat continues to be the best thing because when that happens, which it's going to a lot, all this does is reduce your time in Extreme Heat, meaning you can just super armor your way through and wail on them until they eventually die, because you will eventually win out in a war of immovable objects. In the early game, when you don't have a large heat bar, unless you spent all of your upgrade points to get it, meaning you have nothing else, this strategy isn't as viable, because those hits taken during Extreme Heat turn it off almost instantly, which makes the fights feel even worse than they already do. Your second stance is a combination of Kiryu's Dragon Engine move list with sprinkles of stuff from the original games and Zero, but with aspects of these moves missing from their original incarnations, or for some reason locked behind Extreme Heat, rendering them mostly unusable or out of the way. Beast's charge attacks are back, but for some reason the third hit doesn't launch enemies anymore. Finishing Holds is locked behind Extreme Heat, Ultimate Essence is locked behind Extreme Heat, Essence of the Dragon God is locked behind Extreme Heat. This is still the best feeling Kiryu style has been since the departure of the original engine and the original fighting style perfected in Yakuza 5 after we unfortunately jumped to the Dragon Engine. I know I haven't talked much about the Spy Kids 3D stance, which I do have a decent amount of thoughts on, but before I can really get into it, I need to establish one of the most frustrating inconsistencies in this game's combat, and that is the launchers. Half of the time, they just don't fucking work. Fat enemies in most instances can't be launched, and if they can, their gravity is so much more than every other enemy in the game, they just fall out of your combos straight to the ground, or require you to be in Extreme Heat. But like we already established, you can't combo them while in this mode because you are doing scripted animation snapping Batman Arkham combat. Bosses can only be launched in most instances in Extreme Heat mode, and if they haven't already entered their heat mode. From my experience, it seems that main story bosses can be launched way less compared to the ones from sub-stories or any of the other side content that are just faceless mooks with a name. But even after saying that, I still have plenty of examples of major story bosses sometimes being able to be launched but other times not, and it seems completely random. The utility wire only works on basic enemies, fat enemies can't be grappled by it, and bosses can't be grappled by it. In fact, they actively parry it, but if you grab a basic enemy and then pull them to you, if the boss collides with and gets clipped by that downward punch, they will get launched too. So the fact they can be launched, but none of your basic launchers can 90% of the time, begs the question, why did they make it like this? Then you have the launcher in the dragon stance, and unless you're near a wall or an arena boundary, they often are sent too far away to actually follow up on to juggle them. If the game gave you back control of Kiryu a little faster than it does now, then this would not be an issue. With the massive inconsistencies of the launchers, especially the Agent Styles launcher, now explained and out of the way, we can get back to talking about the Agent style as a whole, and how I found it to be extremely disappointing. Most of your abilities straight up suck, feeling like complete traps to put points into, with the only one worth focusing on being the utility wire. faster. And like we already showed, it has its own issues too. The cigarette bombs require too much setup due to their long detonation countdown. Bosses don't react to them. Only when you are in extreme heat mode do they have any application, as they become instant detonations in a pseudo heat move that consumes your meter. This is how I thought they would work from the start, but sadly don't. Maybe if they stuck to enemies like a Semtex, they'd have more use, but whenever I tried to weave it into gameplay, enemies would just walk past it, or I would have to stand close enough to keep them standing on it, so I would end up getting hit by it too. The drones are just embarrassing. I seriously thought I was doing something wrong with them because I would call them in and enemies would just swat them away like a bug interrupting their meal at Arby's. If that doesn't happen, then the drones are simply circling around them doing nothing. Keep in mind, you have to hold down a button and are unable to do combos while calling in these drones. In extreme heat, the drones upgrade to a massive swarm that actually do decent damage, but not enough to not just do basic extreme heat combos, since they are way faster and isn't limited or has a cooldown like the super drone horde does. Maybe the drones could have had some more application if you can call them in while doing combos. Say you moved the button to one of the bumpers or triggers and had full control of Kiryu while doing so, kind of like how you can charge your gun while doing combos as Nero and DMC. As is, I seriously don't know what they were going for with this ability. Maybe I'm missing something, but talking to other people, it seems like I'm not. But the combat's not all bad. I still constantly tried to do cool combos, even if it meant fights dragged on forever because I wasn't blowing away health bars in extreme heat. There's actually a huge aspect of the combat that is super enjoyable, that being the game's arena. While it might be a bit lacking in the roster compared to the other arenas like 2's, as I found myself fighting the same guys over and over again, and some fights having very little variation, the overall experience gives you the opportunity to have some really good fights, do big team battles alongside some of the all-stars of the series, which the fact friendly fire is on does get in the way, as you are sent into the bounce house by your allies' AoE attacks. At least it goes both ways, as the enemy AI would accidentally kill their own teammates, and most importantly, get to play as a ton of characters never before playable. It's pretty damn whack that Majima, Saejima, and Daigo are locked behind paid DLC instead of being a reward for doing everything or something within the game itself. The fact that they don't have heat bars and are missing a bunch of their unique character traits leaves them feeling like a shell of their 0 and 5 incarnations, since they only have a handful of their full move list, which only highlights that you have to pay $8 real-world dollars for them. Feels even more like Sega is nickel and diming you for this subpar game they are stealthily selling at $60 for the complete shit experience. The arena also adds a pretty hefty grind to the game because you need to buy playable characters, walking up to this one character near the help desk and doing gacha rolls with your currency that you should be using for upgrades so you can unlock fighters. And said fighters start at level 1, meaning you need to grind to make them usable because they start out so pathetically weak and feel like utter shit to play that you are going to struggle to do even the easiest of arena trials. This includes the 3 characters you have to spend $8 real-world dollars to get, so you're either going to have to level them up yourself by taking them into low-level trials and just suffering through it hoping that you can win a few, or take them into big team battles and hope they soak up enough XP that they can become usable and pray that they don't get knocked out by a bunch of enemies and get a boo-boo that you have to go bring them a gift to make them feel better, or take them into another battle where they have a frowny face like it's Persona 3, where they will be practically useless and most likely get knocked out again, or will feel even more shit if you stupidly take them into a solo trial. This does mean that the arena eventually does get pretty repetitive, as you are fighting the same hordes of dudes in the same big team battles over and over again, only they have increasingly larger health bars, super armor, and the ability to make these fights drag on forever. It's so fun to almost beat these guys only for their boss to instantly activate an ability that completely heals the entire party. That's so much fun. I'm so glad they can do that. I'm so glad I just wasted multiple minutes of my time only to see the snap of a finger make it all instantly disappear. Then we have the story, and oh god, where do I even begin with this? It's the biggest problem I have with this game and the thing actively draining any will I have to make this video because there's just so much. I have had multiple multi-hour rants with people about how stupid and awful this game's story is that I legit feel like an insane person. It's not even a case where there is a smoking gun, one thing I can point to and say, this is why I hate this game and it did not work for me. It's a million small issues and a handful of major ones that are all tangled together like the cables behind my TV stand. It's a mess. Most of the story in this game does not matter. Huge sections are just padding, either lore/trauma dumping or recapping Yakuza 7, because that's going on parallel to this game and expects you to know what that story is even if you haven't played it. RG GG. At this point, 18 games in, including all of the mainline entries, spin-offs, and remakes, you just gotta accept that people need to have played the previous games to understand what's going on, and don't hurt the pacing of this game's story to constantly explain to someone who might not have played 7 what is going on. I know this is just some intern being paid to make this post, but do not go on Twitter and tell people this is the perfect place to hop in the series if you're new. You are actively lying to people. Gaiden is juggling 2 completely different groups of antagonists, so there is always a period of the game where one isn't relevant at all and can be completely forgotten about, resulting in the main villains and final boss of this game not having any bit of relevance or screen time for 7+ hours. In my 20-hour playthrough, that is mostly because of busy work and padding. So much stuff that should have been left unsaid and did not need to be shown is constantly put a spotlight on, only to de-elevate things from the ending of Yakuza 6 or even from within this game. Everyone is a fucking moron and no one's plans ever make any sense. Parts of this are here basically to say, here is the ending of Yakuza 6 you wanted, or explaining why it actually makes sense Kiryu is walking around in broad daylight at the end of 7 and wasn't extremely stupid given the ending of 6. But none of that shit matters because the final boss is cool and the final scene of this game is genuinely one of the best in the entire series, so that magically negates all of the terrible shit you had to go through to get to this good point. Gaiden is simply peak, Your Honor, being heralded as the best Yakuza game, sitting at an overwhelmingly positive on Steam, highest rated game in the series on Backlogged, and will probably make a lot of people mad that I didn't like it, which I'm sorry, I didn't have the same experience as you. Enjoy the game all you want, but leave me alone. I'm not the mouthpiece to validate your opinions, or be a spokesperson for the series who isn't allowed to have any negative opinions or different feelings from everyone else's collective sentiment. Let's back up and start from the beginning. So at the end of Yakuza 6, the whole times are changing, we can't go on the adventures we used to, and Kiryu, you can't just keep solving all of your problems by going somewhere and beating up a bunch of dudes themes come to a crescendo as Kiryu, for all intents and purposes, must die so his family can live in peace. Kiryu chooses to not take the hush money so he wouldn't be blackmailed and manipulated by the Daidoji, and in 7 he shows up to help at the end as a no-name guy basically saying, my hands are tied, but the powers that be, aka the Daidoji, don't want Ryo Aoki to become prime minister and take over Japan, so I am helping in what limited ways I can. As much as I like those scenes, Kiryu arguably should have never come back after he walked away at the end of 6, but that's besides the point. What is said in 7 is fine and did not need to be expounded upon more than this. But because this game exists, and then shows all the shit it does, not only is Kiryu on the Daidoji's leash and the kid's safety is constantly threatened, which makes him look completely stupid for not taking the money and proposing this deal to begin with, the Daidoji constantly undermine their own deal. The game opens to Kiryu out in Kamurocho on a mission. The dude is blocks away from Stardust. What if Yuya saw him? What if Kazuki saw him? What if anyone who knows this guy who has spent most of his life here saw him just walking down the street that he is now? But they don't, because none of these characters matter anymore. Kiryu then goes on his new mission and talks to Hanawa, saying, is it okay that I'm here? Won't these guys know me? Only for Hanawa to say, nah, it's fine. And 2 steps from Kiryu later, the other agents go,
Well, if it isn't the legendary dragon of Dojima, Kazuma Kiryu, I guess you didn't die after all.
This is the organization that is supposed to be rich and powerful enough to be running the country from the shadows. Metal Gear Solid's the Patriots level powerful, yet are constantly shown to be completely inept, and put Kiryu into situations where he is constantly revealing the fact that this extremely iconic and identifiable guy is indeed still alive. It's to the point I genuinely can't tell if this is intentional. Is this some sort of commentary about political powers and how they can be so stupid and bad at their jobs, but because they have so much money and connections, it doesn't even matter? It becomes a running bit throughout the game that people instantly recognize the guy and he goes, nah, I'm Joe Ryu, and then the conversation moves on. So now all aspects of 6's ending both don't matter and make all the characters involved look stupid. Kiryu chose to die so his family would be left alone and he wouldn't be a puppet, only for both of those things to happen. And the Daidoji constantly talk about how Kiryu can't exist, yet keep sending him out on missions in places where people will recognize him very easily and then blame him for being recognized. Then Shishido is introduced and he starts out cool. He has this awesome design and introduction. He beats the fuck out of everybody. Then you get a call about him from the Daidoji.
that Ungayo, Magumba, whatever his fucking name is, that's a bad motherfucker, you understand me? Stiopic, you better start eating those hot beef sandwiches with the sausage in the middle, because you better bulk up, do push-ups, you better go to Mexico, that's a tough motherfucker. But listen, the immigrant mentality is always there, you follow me?
But he and Nishitani, who I also have a lot to say about, are criminally undercooked in this game. You fight Shishido out in public as your tutorial boss for the Yakuza stance later, then you see him again 3 hours after that to introduce the arena, and Kiryu literally says, "Am I supposed to care?" when he tries to give you a lore dump about Nishitani. Then you finally get his lore dump against your will at the end of the arena segment, where he trauma dumps some of his backstory at Kiryu, who again says he does not care to his face and walks away. Then it wasn't for another near 8 hours before he shows up again for the fellas quest.
All my fellas. All my fellas. All my fellas.
He matters so little to the story that he had to be called in by a much more relevant character on the phone to become a part of the plot, because otherwise he wouldn't have shown up for an even longer period of time until the very end of the game. It definitely seems like people got way more out of these scenes than me. I enjoyed them and thought they were fun, but it sure as hell isn't anywhere near enough to characterize this guy to have me saying he's one of the best characters and villains in the series as people have been painting him. I'm jumping over a lot of the plot I want to talk about, but it feels needed to do first in order to articulate one of my major frustrations with this game. Its pacing is so bad that it actively hurts potentially interesting characters like Shishido. Surano basically takes up all the screen time in hanging out with Kiryu that Shishido should have if he wanted to have any bit of impact once he reveals to be betraying you. There isn't anything about his story that's bad in my eyes, it's simply there's no time for any of it to marinate. It has so little time that a nameless, faceless mook has to come up to Shishido and talk to him like an alien so they can further drive home how he was a slave to Nishitani in both body and mind, which makes you wonder why the fuck would some random grunt talk to a commanding officer like this and not expect to be beaten with an inch of their life or actively killed where they stood. Imagine someone did this to another high-ranking character in the Omi. Imagine a dude went up to Majima saying, "Isn't it crazy you were tied to a pole and had your eye scooped out with a knife while your brother does the hit alone, which gets him locked up in jail for 25 years and made you play a fake persona this whole time?" That guy would be fucking murdered. The only reason that doesn't happen to Sagawa, because this would mean Majima broke his agreement, which he is trying to use in the attempt to get back into the clan. But here, Shishido has no real reason not to just kill this guy who is beneath him, other than this dude needs to be here to attempt to stab Watase in 7, which itself is weird that this game tried to make this random dude a semi-important character but not even give him a name. This game has multiple lore dumps and plot synopsises like this for Yakuza 7 because that's happening parallel to this game and expects you to know what's happening for any of Gaiden's final chapter to have stakes or context. Shishido gets a second lore dump after he kills Nishitani, explaining to Kiryu why it was totally okay we killed that guy. Because this game, without its padding, is so short, they don't have time to show you anything and instead constantly have to tell you all the tragic things that happen to these characters off screen, or tell you just how evil the other characters are because they don't do anything in the game to actually warrant these emotions towards them. Nishitani is the biggest waste in this game. He might be the most undercooked villain in the entire series. Finally, someone to rival Munakata from Yakuza 4. This guy has no character of his own and entirely relies on your past attachment to characters and events from previous better games. Nishitani is the endpoint for the series' obsession with Yakuza 0 callbacks and fan service masturbation. His character is that he has the same name as a guy from the most popular game in the series and is also apparently a part of the Jingwu Mafia, which is mentioned in a single line for people to point at the screen and then never comes up again. Both of these facets of his character don't actually come up in the game in a meaningful way. Why the fuck should the fact that this guy is Nishitani III mean anything to Kiryu? It doesn't. He actively says it doesn't matter. The first time you see Nishitani actually do anything, you beat him from pillar to post so bad he is left unconscious in front of all of his men in the middle of his stupid boat castle utopia, to the point it feels like you just really embarrassed the guy. His men react like they just watched their dads get beat up. Something that for another character would be a massive point of revenge. They feel like they need to reclaim their honor or something, but that doesn't happen because this character has no bearing on the plot and has no importance and doesn't fucking matter. You could completely erase him from this game and nothing changes. Most of his screen time is spent sitting in a chair that everyone looks up to from a mile away, and the few times the camera zooms in on him grabbing his dick. I guess it really is just the case that if a guy gives a good enough or memorable enough performance, people will find them a
good character despite having no bearing on the plot. He has such little screen time and importance that the other character that is just as irrelevant as him has to explain why this guy is actually super duper important after you already killed him in his dramatic set piece boss fight. The game doesn't actually show you anything about him being a villain or give you any reason to think why he is such a threat to the dissolution of the clans beyond telling the player they should hate him and he will be a problem. Now we can circle back to the Daidoji, which, like I started talking about earlier, might be the most incompetent secret organization to run a large part of the world behind the scenes that I've ever witnessed, and I can't tell if parts of it are intentional or not. Hanawa is taken by Surano and Shishido, to which the rest of the Daidoji tell Kiryu to forget about him. He's as good as dead. Kiryu is disgusted by this fatherless behavior, beats up everybody at the Daidoji base, and goes out to save him. How this doesn't get all of the kids at the orphanage killed, I don't know, but the game doesn't dwell on it, so neither will I. This leads us to the whole meeting of Akame and doing the arena on the boat, eventually leading us to fighting Surano a second time and saving Hanawa. Again, to really drive home how terrible the pacing of this game is, I just summarized 5 hours of content in 3 sentences because both so much and so little happens in that time. Welcome to the Gaiden paradox. Now that Surano is being held captive at the Daidoji base in Sotenbori, we are put on a Zoom call with Brother Conflict, who lambasts us for getting our identity revealed on the mission they sent us on in public that Kiryu said was a bad idea. If the Daidoji don't want his identity revealed so badly, then why do they keep sending him out into public? Are they stupid? They even reveal that the fine print of the agreement is that it's on Kiryu not to reveal himself. So why is he even being sent on missions then? Because of this violation of their agreement, Kiryu has to get rid of all the evidence of him being alive, starting with killing Surano in the interrogation room, then moving on to Shishido, then everyone else in the Watase family. What about the other dudes on the roof that have the picture of you on their smartphone that are a part of the Seiryu clan, who were told in a text message that you work for the Daidoji? What about the agents in the room that just heard Brother Conflict call you Kiryu? What about all the other dudes at the docks who recognized you that didn't get super omega murdered that the game made a point to go, he got what's coming to him? What if the sun exploded? I don't know. I guess the game just doesn't care about the finer details, so I should just stop harping on about it because it makes me sound like a nitpicky asshole. Kiryu understandably doesn't like the idea of having to kill the at least 30 people he was directly told to, plus all the other ones the game conveniently left out for us, so he pulls a gun on Hanawa, lets Surano escape, and then has a boss fight with all the Daidoji agents again. After this fight, Hanawa pulls out his last resort while Kiryu is trying to call the orphanage to warn them. Daidoji agents are all outside ready to kill them, and Hanawa is waiting to give them the signal. The game makes it a point to have Hanawa say that he doesn't want to do this, he wished Kiryu didn't force him to this point, and that he's only following orders. Kinda like all the soldier stuff talked about in Metal Gear Solid 3, the mission is absolute, all that matters is seeing the mission through to the end. So Kiryu, without any other option, backs down, and they hold him up in the interrogation room for 3 days. The next chapter starts, and they come in to tell him that he is going to be executed by Hanawa as Hanawa's punishment for you, his agent, stepping out of line when he should be managing you better. To really make sure that he kills you, everyone in the room pulls out a gun and points it at him, saying, "See, you don't have to feel guilty, we forced you to do it," and continues to push him to pull the trigger. Kiryu even tells Hanawa it's fine and to shoot him. Hanawa breaks down and throws the gun on the ground, saying that he can't kill Kiryu, meaning that the Kmart Morinaga is now going to kill both of them. As they close their eyes awaiting their fate, his gun clicks, revealing that all the other agents' guns were actually empty this whole time. Brother Conflict wheels himself in and says that the boys passed his fortune cookie test of loyalty. Surano then walks in and drops a briefcase full of 5 billion yen in money and assets, which is what the Daidoji set the price of Kiryu's life at. So now Watase can rent Kiryu like he is a VHS from Blockbuster for his birthday party. Brother Conflict then reveals that if Hanawa did kill Kiryu, then they would have had to still kill Surano. So good job, bro, you didn't fuck everything up. This also means that his gun was actually loaded and could have very easily killed Kiryu if he wanted to. To make this whole chain of events even dumber, we get a scene with Brother Peace and Brother Conflict leading the hideout going, man, it was a good thing that Hanawa didn't actually kill Kiryu, further highlighting that at any point during all of this, Hanawa could have shot Kiryu, thus negating everything they hoped would happen. Why would they do this? Are they stupid? Why would they risk not getting the money and losing 2 of their top agents and then have to go hunt down the Watase family if a guy who was just shown to be all about the mission and loyalty to the Daidoji not kill the guy he was ordered to at gunpoint to shoot? What if Hanawa did exactly exactly what Kiryu pulled earlier and flipped around and started shooting at them. Hanawa could have easily sent Kmart Morinaga on a one-way ticket to the land of wind and ghosts by blasting him point blank with his gun, which is loaded, while his isn't. They put all of this on him not pulling the trigger, which makes no sense that he doesn't, other than the outside of the game facet that the game, and by extension 8 as well, won't happen if Kiryu dies here. And if your explanation of why the story turns out this way is because there would be no game otherwise, then it's probably fucking stupid to begin with. I am genuinely flabbergasted at how stupid the Daidoji are in this game. I wish I had a recording of my live reaction to this scene because it had me so heated. Next, we move into the Nishitani arc because it's finally time for him to be poised as an alleged relevant character in this game. After we rest at Akame's and spend some time with the Fucko network, we meet with Suverno back at the castle. Suverno then gives us a half Yakuza 7 plot synopsis by explaining Daigo and Watase's plan, then talks about the topic at hand, which is the fact that in order for the dissolution plan to work, Nishitani needs to be out of the picture. Otherwise, the Omi will reform around him because he's that much of a big deal apparently. Of course, these two chuckle fucks decide that it would be a good idea to talk about this and how they were going to get rid of Nishitani within earshot and direct line of sight of Nishitani. Why would they do this? Are they stupid? The answer is apparently yes, because Suverno starts shitting his pants when Nishitani spots them and calls them up to his throne via a waiter, which the pool is filled with, and any of them could have easily overheard this conversation at any point. Kiryu and Suverno are very loudly going, "We have to kill Nishitani, and this is how we are going to kill Nishitani. We are going to use these tools to kill Nishitani at this time, at this place, with this plan. We are going to kill him." Long story short, this triggers the next long battle by fighting our way off of the ship. We go on the Fellas quest, then attack Nishitani's hideout and take over the ship. We get a good boss battle ending with Shishido killing Nishitani while we go to open the door. The explanation we talked about earlier why we had to kill him happens, and then a month passes. Then we get the worst cutscene in this game that had me burst out laughing. It's basically just a slideshow recapping the remaining hours of Yakuza 7's plot so we can get the context for this final chapter. Then we meet up with Suverno, who then gives us another Yakuza 7 lore dump after we just had one because Kiryu needs to know who Ichiban is. Then we go to pick up Watase at a construction site, and Watase is dressed as Peter Griffin for some reason. Kiryu and Watase start talking very loudly about their plan in front of the Watase family, which I thought no one was supposed to know about this plan besides the select few people, so why are they doing this? Oh, I know, it's so Shishido can record a video for his TikTok and have his big reveal that he was the villain the whole time, and that he has been waiting to betray you. I guess to this game's credit, up until this point I was wondering when Suverno was going to betray me or die, because neither of these two characters are in Yakuza 7, but this just brings me back to the point that if this was supposed to be some big dramatic reveal, then why wasn't Shishido the character we spent most of the game palling around with when we aren't with Hanawa? It's literally the joke Mr. Plinkett made about Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn in his episode 1 video, where they should have taken Shishido and Suverno and combined them into one good character, Shishido. Instead, we get a 15-minute cutscene, I went back and timed it, where Shishido and then Nishitani explain why they are betraying you by repeating the same shit multiple times. This cutscene feels like it goes on forever, and then makes me wonder why Shishido, a man who has every reason to hate Nishitani and does, as his only character trait for most of this game is, I hate Nishitani, I want him dead, but instead he decides that he's gonna have this elaborate plan where he pretends to stab him with a prop knife that shoots out fake blood that is only viewable for the player, not even Kiryu, then has paramedics off screen apparently that can immediately save him because he's not even dead for longer than 2 seconds before the game decides to show us that, hey, this guy is still alive, he's gonna clearly show up later, and then it makes you wonder, why the fuck is his face even bandaged? Did he get burned? What is that? So this all begs the question of, why is he teaming up with Nishitani then? You know what, it's fine. Now he suddenly goes from a character who hates Nishitani for all the horrible things he has done to him and other members of the clan, to out of nowhere wanting to prevent the clan from dissolving and teaming up with his rapist and slave owner to do so. I seriously do not understand why he wouldn't just kill Nishitani and keep going on with his plan as it is now. He clearly doesn't need the manpower, as he is shown to be strong enough to take on every major character from the series at the same time, like he's somebody's DeviantArt OC. He's Vegeta's long lost brother, he's Steel the Hedgehog. He's just as powerful, if not more than everybody else, and he's way cooler and everybody loves him. And because Shishido has such little screen time, it just feels like a forced twist I saw coming because we had to have a bad guy to fight at the end of the game, and we have so few characters and time that they can't just make a new guy appear out of nowhere that we haven't seen before. This game is so predictable, obvious, and creatively bankrupt with what it wants to do and say that I was constantly anticipating and even saying exactly what was going to happen down to the dialogue, but then they can't even get this right because they need to have have that subversion. So they make someone who doesn't have any reason to stop you other than he suddenly wants to in this exact cutscene at the 19th hour. Like I said earlier, there isn't anything wrong with this premise. He's supposed to be the personification of the Yakuza's inability to change and how they will inevitably end up destroying themselves trying to stay the same in a world that is actively hostile to them, so blinded by the past and delusions of grandeur that they can't see the world around them for what it really is. But none of this is built up for Shishido to be the figure piece for this narrative. If anyone, it should have been Tsuruno. Sure, it would have been obvious and predictable, but that's because the game very clearly laid out the groundwork through all of your time with him that he is a guy who is obviously in over his head, but has an idea of what the Yakuza stand for to him and wants to preserve that. He seems like he's trying to do the right thing for the clan and his men, even if he fucks up along the way. This is shown in minor ways, like how the grunts say that Tsuruno never takes them out to eat during the Fella's quest. The series has such a hard-on for last-minute twists, misdirections, and swerves that it often goes completely off the rails to do so. It's hard not to be predictable after having 17 original story entries, but being predictable doesn't have to be a bad thing. In my opinion, being predictable to the viewer is only bad when it feels like I am seeing the same thing again without any interesting deviations or flair. Yakuza 2, without reinventing the wheel, took the same outline and explored other facets of the themes set up in 1. You don't need the last-minute twists or reveal of some grand conspiracy of what's really going on. That's how you get shit like the end of Lost Judgment, which gets lost so far up its own ass in government conspiracies that it makes the main character's stance on the matter feel like he is being stupid and ignoring the bigger picture, with his only retort being, "But Sawa Sensei though," when anyone could and does easily pick apart his argument. I think that stories often seem more predictable now than ever because people just have such a better understanding of how story structure works that they actually see the setups that will eventually be paid off later. That's not being predictable, that's telling a coherent story that makes sense and doesn't blindside you with something that you couldn't have possibly known and then dangle how you couldn't have known that in front of your face and how smart the story is. Like I've been saying throughout the video, Gaiden could have had a better structured, better paced, and more coherent story, but it got lost in both sticking to the trappings that have been plaguing this series for a while and actively trying to escape them at the same time. The whole reason that Kiryu is even present at the disillusion at the end of Yakuza 7 is so he can block this whack-ass mix-up. And then Gaiden is like, what if Watase was actually stabbed 3 hours earlier? Which also doubles as a fake out for Tsuruno being murdered at the end because obviously this character isn't going to show up later. Why is Kiryu so fucking bad at his job, man? Why do they write him like this? During this whole exchange in the construction site, Nishitani cuts Tsuruno's leg, which is to explain why he wasn't a part of the Omi HQ segment in 7. He was conveniently off-screen leaning against the wall, just out of frame from all angles the entire time, guys. Trust me. From here on out is where the game is actually enjoyable. Shishido's boss fight is the highlight of this game, and what I would assume is the whole reason people think he is cool and this game is good. It only took me 19 of my 20-hour playthrough for the game to decide that it wants to be a good video game. Unfortunately, it was too little too late. This fight does remind me though of arguably the best final boss in the series, Aizawa from 5. Now that I mention it, Shishido is just Aizawa if you did not have an entire massive 50+ hour game to build a theme that was the subtitle for this guide to embody, Chasing the Dream. You have such well shot transitions between parts of the Omi HQ, we get to fight alongside the boys for a bit, the music is great, Shishido in this cutscene even shows how useful the laser wire is against bosses by flinging Kiryu 50 feet in the air after he dared to use this piece of shit on a boss. After the fight, the Daidoji kidnaps Shishido, so who knows if he's gonna show up in Rush Hour 3. The next scene gives us some flashbacks to bits of Yakuza 7 I would have actually liked to play through as Kiryu, like fighting Ichiban, but instead we had to spend like an hour plus on the Nishitani arc to steal a boat to get it on TV so people would know about its existence, and then have that shit explained away in a single line so we could still go back to it later. Then we get the best cutscene, which almost made all of the suffering through all of that terrible content in this game worth it. It's the reason why I think people love this game so much. It is one of the best moments in the series, feeling like a payoff to the build-up started with 5. And that's the video of the kids on the iPad telling Kiryu they're all doing okay, what they're doing with their futures, and that they love and miss him. This scene alone could have been and should have been just in Yakuza 7 after the fight with Ichiban. If that's what happened, it would have been fantastic and made the game even better. It also would have explained why Kiryu was out in public in that game after we just saw the end of Yakuza 6 without taking away from that ending. Hanawa just had to walk up to you and go, "Thank you for helping out the Daidoji on this this occasion. As a reward, I have something for you," and then hands him the iPad. Kiryu would still have his ultimate sacrifice and the send-off from 6, while also showing us what he's doing now without undermining too much of the goodbye 6 is meant to be. Then he should have never showed up again in this series, so it could focus on the new cast and other old protagonists without acting like they don't exist. Instead, we got this dogshit game that waffles around for hours with bullshit that doesn't matter and terrible side content, all so we can get to this single scene. Remember how I said this could have been DLC for 7 or somehow reincorporated into 8 at the start of this video? Well, while making this video, we found an article that stated this is exactly what the game started as. Instead of just being the DLC, they thought it was strong enough of an idea to have a full-fledged physical release, but that meant that the game needed more content to justify it and its price tag, so they went and added all of that padding, making for a worse game and showing all the stuff that did not need to be there. They actively ruined the few good moments of this game so they can include them in a 20-hour shit sandwich sold to you at $50. If it was just a $15 DLC akin to the Kaito files but smaller, it would have been fantastic. No Daidoji incompetence, no Kiryu looking stupid and making the ending of 6 look worse, no Nishitani, no waffling around for hours with busy work, just Kiryu going on his mission, getting closure about his kids while setting up the reason why he's going to Hawaii with the scene with Hanawa about the church he wanted to go to with Yumi. Hell, you could have the boat and the arena still in the game, just don't make it a plot-centric thing. I'm still really looking forward to Infinite Wealth and fully expect it to be much better than this 6-month stillbirth, which I never want to think about or touch again, but eventually will have to for its episode in the retrospective. This is the first game in the franchise which I have previously fully believed when I said truly had no bad games in it. Even with my disdain for the Kiwami remakes, Gaiden has brought me to the point of rethinking that belief. It feels so weird to say, and part of me doesn't want to because it's still a competent game in areas with some legitimate good character moments, but the good is sadly drowned out with the bad when I look back on my time with Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name. It is so frustrating to see a game in my favorite series ever fumble so hard, feeling like it's actively wasting my time and pissing away everything narratively and thematically they've built up for all of these years. All so Kiryu could have his final goodbye for the 3rd time and then have his final goodbye for the 4th time with Infinite Wealth. Like this whole game's narrative, Yakuza, the series, has been unable to let go of Kiryu. They keep walking back his final goodbye because they are so scared to let him go. They were so scared to let him go that they couldn't even keep it in their pants enough to not have Kiryu in the promotional material and on the front of the box of Yakuza fucking 4 to make the reveal that he's still alive once you play Saejima and wash up on the beach and completely take away all the impact that scene could have possibly fucking had. That's how scared they are. That's how scared they are of letting go of Kiryu. They couldn't even let Yakuza 3 fucking end on a cliffhanger that Kiryu was stabbed by Hamazaki. They had to have an after credit sequence that showed he was completely fine and bandaged up. I'm completely fine with change. In fact, I have been the biggest proponent that Kiryu should have never fucking come back in the first place, even with the fact that I love the ending of Yakuza 6 and think it's a great send-off and think it's a great finale to Kiryu. This bittersweet, tragic ending for the character and hero we have followed for all of these years, this larger-than-life figure that we've looked up to for so long. But the truth is that we already had the perfect ending long before this game even came out, and that was with Yakuza 5. I firmly believe that the ending of Yakuza 5 has lost some oomph with the fact that more games have happened now. Anyone getting into the series now cannot really understand the context of when this game came out. I don't think they could really understand the importance, so I want to recount it. Think of it this way. This series was in dire straits after Dead Souls came out. It took years for 5 to come out and it was digital only on the PS3, but it was better than nothing and we were finally going to see the largest game RGG had ever made finally in English. This game we'd waited so long for finally came out, and you know what happened? The game had the fucking balls to not walk back its cliffhanger ending. You're not getting a post-credit scene to explain what happens after this one, bitch. We don't know if Kiryu bleeds out or not in that snowy street with Haruka. Obviously, with the knowledge of 6, 7, Gaiden, and 8 existing, Kiryu clearly lives. But at the time, you didn't know. And you know what happened next? Not a sequel, we got a prequel happening decades before that game happened. Arguably, Kiryu shouldn't have been in that game because he doesn't have a lot to do and it kind of sucks in that game, but that's besides the point. But if you were really looking forward to finding out the conclusion, finding out for definitive fact if Kiryu lived or not, you didn't get your answer. Because honestly, it didn't fucking matter. It's become a meme at this point, but it perfectly encapsulates Yakuza 5. It was about the dream we chased along the way. And also, I really like tragic sad endings, so, you know, good job. You get bonus points from me, bro. It takes balls balls to actively write an ending that will piss off most people because they do not get it. People were not ready for the ultimate Kino ending that Yakuza 5 is the fucking end of the series and it never continued. Only goats like Kentaro Miura have the balls to do shit like this, not giving people the ending they wanted but truly needed even if they wouldn't initially or even ever accept it by going, you know what, maybe Guts doesn't get his revenge in the end. Maybe he finds something more important to him than the revenge and he lets go. It's more important to be with the people that he actually loves and cares about that are alive with him now than killing himself in order to kill Griffith, all for revenge for people who would rather not have him do this. Then Yakuza 6 happens and in spite of all of its massive amounts of flaws, it still has a great ending. It shows Kiryu committing the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good of his loved ones, even if he would not be able to be there to experience it with them, knowing that this was for the better. And this has been slowly unraveled and undone with each new release in the series. I was open to the idea of Kiryu coming back and thought, you know, if anyone can prove me wrong, it's the guys at RGG, but unless Infinite Wealth does something absolutely groundbreaking and amazing, which who knows, it very well could be, but I'm not holding my breath on it, this game just reaffirms that, yeah, Kiryu should have never came back. The continuous walkbacks are only ruining the good ending you already had. I don't know if you're bringing him back and redoing the ending over and over again because you're reacting to the reaction of how people did not like the ending of Yakuza 6, but you know what? Fuck them. They didn't get it. Who gives a shit? The series would have been better off just continuing to 7 with Ichiban and the gang, or having a game focused on any of the other previously playable characters. Except for Shinada, because his story was over. People stop asking for this character to come back. It's bad enough they keep on doing the ending of Kiryu. Don't make them bring back my boy. Let him live his happy days with Milky-chan. If you've made it this far into the video, I just want to say thanks for watching as always. If you really like the channel, then please consider passing the video around, leaving a like and a comment, and consider becoming a patron on Patreon. All patrons... So if it wasn't already obvious based on what I said in this video so far, my Gaiden review was originally planned to come out before the release of Infinite Wealth. It ended up taking longer than we wanted it to, but the final plan was to release it on the day Infinite Wealth came out in America. Unfortunately, I ended up getting hit by a car on the way to go buy the game the day it came out, because morons don't know how to use their brakes. So this means that Infinite Wealth gets to have the wonderful title of being the only game that has caused me to get into a car accident, so good job. This obviously means that the final revised plan didn't happen either, and it's been 5 months since Gaiden came out. But in the end, I'm glad that was the case, because now it saves me a lot of time of having to make another video or add addendums to the comments of this video. Instead, I can now take what was a 58-minute video and turn it into however long it is now, because after playing Infinite Wealth to completion, oh boy, does it make me have a lot more things to say about this piece of shit. I don't know if we are going to end up making a Infinite Wealth review video. Me and Pat are pretty tired after this one, and the end of Infinite Wealth, along with talking about it with other people after they finished it, has drained us of wanting to think about these games anymore. I never thought I would hit this point, but I'm honestly pretty Yakuza'd out for a bit. I'd rather them not make another game for a while after this one, and if they do, I don't know if I really want to play it day one. If I don't end up making a review on Infinite Wealth, I do have a smallish review on Backlogged that you can go read to get an idea of how I'm feeling about this game. What I do plan to talk about here in this video is strictly parts of Infinite Wealth that pertain to the story of Gaiden. Last call for Infinite Wealth spoilers. Anything from here on out expects you to have either played that game to completion or don't care that you're being told the story and its twists. What the fuck
was that.
Infinite Wealth has further cemented my belief that like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name is a fucking scam. This is Yokoyama's trick. The biggest lie ever told about this game is that it is important. They have fooled us all into spending $50 on a filler episode. I cannot believe that there isn't a single thing in this game that matters or has any bearing on the plot of Infinite Wealth, despite it being marketed as the missing piece that needs to be shown. It is so painfully obvious after playing Infinite Wealth that Gaiden was written after. These two stories feel like they were written in complete isolation of one another. After just playing Gaiden, you would think that Hanawa is poised to be this big important character going forward. He is the human connection Kiryu has to the Daidoji, a faction that this game has already made to look stupid and completely incompetent, but at least he is shown to have some honor and loyalty and genuinely cares for Kiryu. The end even teases that he knew the guy before he erased his name. There's been this whole talk on social media that apparently some cosplayer at some promotional event talked to Yokoyama and he said that this guy was Morinaga, but the cited source is literally just a bro trust me. So for now, we're not going to act like that is actually the case unless he officially states it in an interview of some kind, either with a website or something else. So flash forward to chapter 9 of Infinite Wealth, and not only is this dude practically a prop piece in the background of the Daidoji safe house, so he's even more of just being a plot device in this game so the gang can have access to said safe house, then he fucking dies to a gunshot to the stomach from a nameless mook with a gun in the background, given no fanfare or anything. I thought the camera would pan to see Hanawa injured, and maybe he would be out of commission for the rest of the game and maybe show back up at the very end to help the party in the final moments or something, but nope, dude is just dead. And to really drive this home, Ichiban FaceTimes Kiryu to tell him this news while standing over the dude's still warm corpse face down in a pool of his own blood. If this was going to be his fate, which was written before Gaiden, then why did we spend almost the entire game trying to save this fucking guy? It's the same shit as Bayonetta 2 and 3, where 2 is all about saving Jeanne from hell, only for her to unceremoniously die by being stabbed in the back because her witch spider sense and ability to manipulate time was not working for no inexplicable reason, so the worst villain in a franchise with already shitty villains runs a mint toothpaste lightsaber kitchen knife through her chest. At least in Bayonetta 2's defense, 3 wasn't made till years later, and was clearly a fucking mess behind the scenes and probably had multiple changes to its story over the course of development. Unlike these two games, which were developed at the same time. I wasn't even all that attached to Hanawa as a character, but I seriously do not understand the thought process about making your prequel minigame be 80% about him, knowing he is going to die by the halfway point of the main game that precedes this. His death in Infinite Wealth only has any weight if you've played Gaiden, because the dude does nothing and has maybe 5 minutes of screen time in this game, and if you did play Gaiden, then these events make that game seem pointless and actively hurt both games. The rest of Gaiden's original characters don't even show up either. I was wondering if and when at the very least Akame would show up, and when talking about it to some friends who were playing the game at the same time, who had also played through Gaiden a week before Infinite Wealth came out, they went, "Who?" Which resulted in me bursting out laughing and Pat going, "Exactly." I do think that I could come to like Shishido as a character like so many others already do, if he actually had a proper game and screen time to build him up. Maybe they have future plans for him in later games, but it feels like such a missed opportunity not to do anything with him in 8. For a game all about how the Watase family acquired Kiryu for the disillusion, and then having 8 be all about the second disillusion, it feels pointless that none of the Watase family characters are relevant at all. They get at the very most mentioned by name a few times throughout this 100-hour game. If Infinite Wealth was going to acknowledge Akiyama's existence, giving him an entire on-screen cameo with the second to last lifelink, which is the most screen time he's had in like a fucking decade, don't mistake what I'm about to complain about as me not liking this lifelink. It is easily one of the best moments in this entire game, but it ends up raising a massive question, which as a result puts into perspective just how stupid and nonsensical Gaiden's plot is. Why couldn't Akiyama just buy Kiryu's freedom from the Daidoji? I know the game says that Akiyama was searching high and low for information if Kiryu was alive and was actively mad that they left him out and left him in the dark for all of these years, but Watase was able to find out that Kiryu was alive. Why didn't he go to Akiyama after the fact? Or have one of his goons go to Akiyama after the fact while he was in prison? Did they forget that he knows Akiyama? That he bowed in front of Akiyama at the end of Yakuza 5 and said that the entirety of the Yakuza are in his debt? Why didn't they go to him for money, other than the outside of the game fact that his actor is often busy so he can't be in these games? And just like how they have to constantly write around the informant archetype characters in these games, the games constantly have to write around the fact that he has an Akiyama $1 million and could easily make most situations and most problems go away by just dropping some cash that he doesn't even care about. The only real tie to the old guard in 8 being the boys sitting in a shack, which don't even show up till chapter 10 of 14, and the only reason they are here is so we can be told that their whole send-off in 7 with starting their own security company ended up being completely undone because they got canceled by a fucking VTuber. And if I gotta start talking about the VTuber, we're gonna be here all day. Just let it be known that if Fuwamoka was here, shit would have gone down differently. To continue the complete disconnect between Gaiden and Infinite Wealth stories, along with the complete disconnect parts of Infinite Wealth story has with itself, what was the point of having an entire game threatening Kiryu's family in Gaiden after making the deal at the end of 6, only to make him have to re-up the deal again in Gaiden? To which Brother Conflict asks, how would Kiryu know he followed through with this, and why would he trust them to uphold their end of the bargain, which they have shown countless times throughout Gaiden that they do not do this. This is probably the most logical and sensible question asked in this entire game, and you know what Kiryu says in response to it? When it comes to keeping promises, I trust the faction. Why would you do this, Kiryu? They have done nothing but break their promises and threaten to send men into your house to kill your children. This is the dumbest Kiryu has ever been written. This is the most flanderized version of Kiryu, and I refuse to accept the terrible argument I have seen that Kiryu has always been dumb. Flash forward to Infinite Wealth, and not only is Kiryu constantly doing things that would get the Daidoji on his ass while wondering if this is okay, only for Date to say, fuck him, what are they gonna do, kill me? He then gets blasted on national TV, seen and streamed by hundreds of TikTokers outside of Tojo HQ, and all of this is somehow fine only until you do the optional, completely missable side content of the last life link for Kiryu, where some new discount Morinaga from the Daidoji beat up Date and then threatened to kill everyone Kiryu cares about, making him re-up his bargain for the second time, only to then turn around and talk to discount Morinaga from the Daidoji in a limo to basically say, we were originally super mad at you, but then we read Hanawa's notes and saw just how much the power of friendship you guys exemplified, so it's totally cool, bro. You're doing us a favor in the end, back in the main story. So Infinite Wealth somehow managed to make the Daidoji even more flippant than they were in Gaiden, which is honestly kind of an impressive feat. Keep in mind that you can only do the final few life links in chapter 12, which is after Kiryu is completely exposed to being alive on national TV, but for some reason, this content has to exist in a void where no one has internet and still thinks he's dead, when we have seen him on TV speaking, so there is no shadow of a doubt there is definitive proof that Kiryu is in fact alive. The structuring of Kiryu's story in the second half of Infinite Wealth is so weird and sloppy because so much of it is time and chapter gated, so massive parts of it are at odds with itself and make no sense. Like for example, you get the cool scene where Kiryu slicks back his hair and puts on the old fit, only to immediately take control of Ichiban and can easily spend another 10 hours before you play as Kiryu. Why would you not save this scene until you beat Ichiban's segment and then cut to Kiryu? This is basic writing 101 structure bullshit. How are we fucking this up? Did the storyboards accidentally get mixed up one day and nobody noticed? Then for one final fuck you to you the viewer, your intelligence, and the end of Yakuza 6 and somehow Gaiden, you see in the post-credit scene that Kiryu is getting chemo for his cancer, so he is somehow not gonna die now, and when the doctor asks him for his name, he gets to say Kiryu Kazuma, unlocking you the achievement The Man Who Reclaimed His Name. Not showing or explaining how or why this happened, you would think with the fact that these two games have been nothing but explaining things that did not need to be shown for idiots who obsess over every granular detail, that this would be something explained, especially considering this has been the focal point of Kiryu's character for 3 fucking games now since the end of Yakuza 6, but just like every other aspect of the end of 8, there is no satisfying payoff and you just get left with a wet fart. Like a Dragon 8 has the most rushed and undeserved ending in the entire series, where a decent chunk of the cast just does not show up for the final scene. You have to be told what they're doing by other characters because they get no screen time, ending off the main cast on a joke continuing the status quo, like this is some bullshit shitty 2000s harem anime. The last few chapters of the game genuinely feel incomplete, like there is massive parts of it that had to be cut because this game was so front-loaded.
But whatever happened to Nishitani?
If you've made it this far into the video, I just want to say thanks for watching as always. If you really like the video, please leave a like and comment and pass the video around. If you really like these videos and the channel, maybe consider becoming a patron on Patreon. It is the best way to support me directly, with multiple tiers including a $3 voting tier, allowing patrons to pick what is the next upcoming multi-game review, which right now the vote is between Jak and Daxter and Metroid Prime. I also have a $7 tier that allows you to view rough cuts of upcoming videos. Some of those currently include my eventual Drakengard retrospective. I'm now going to shout out all of my $5 and up patrons who really help support the channel. Andy F, Bully, Applejuice426, Densha, Turbo Chicken, Scary Dinosaurs, Barely, Elliot Morton, Fishkami, Jordan Bennett, Kevin Velasquez, Kohai Carmen, Lotto, Medi Not the Bad Guy, MGS Duh, Quanner, Quartz, Samuel Egan, Sayin Heggy, Slimph Tingle, Friday Fragmaster, Rovit, Ben Johnson, Buckets, Chichometrius, Cursed Void, Ek Frazo, Filthy Fingers 69, Hardleg Joe, Jacob Hamilton, Lazy Titan, Leon, Nicholas Buspin, Nicholas Pedinato, Pitor Bersky, Sean, Cisagy, Sir Newt, and Michael. Thanks so much, guys. If you're a card game player of any kind, I have a TCG Player affiliate link in the description below. All purchases you make using my link will give me a small kickback. I also have a NordVPN affiliate link, so any plans that you get using my link will also help support the channel. As for what's coming out next, I think I'm going to mainly focus on shorter videos. I don't know, I think something's just broken inside of me. I haven't been able to focus and sit down and work on a long video without feeling like I'm going to die and have some sort of mental breakdown, which is why the Drakengard retrospective isn't done. There has been a bunch of games that have come out recently that I'm interested in covering, so maybe I'll do some short videos or maybe I'll do another backlogged monologue. The most immediate and the PS2 action games to be covered are likely Sword of Destiny and Blood Will Tell, if you are interested in playing those before those videos drop. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time.